My Father, the Psilocybin, and the Time Travel by Dennyrugosa. Summary. Why was Byakuya so certain that Senku was still alive after the petrification? Why did he believe so deeply that Senku would one day revive civilization? Perhaps it was because Byakuya had already met Senku, the one from the future, who had come to him in a time machine. The mysterious petrification event years ago had left only 6 humans alive on the entire planet. They struggled and survived together on a remote island south of Japan. Byakuya Ishigami emerged from the waves, gasping for breath. His companion, Shamil, chuckled. "You still swim like a rock." Byakuya laughed, wiping the seawater from his face while clutching a basket full of shellfish. "I'm not swimming for medals. I swim to survive." "Hey!" Lillian waved from the top of the sand dune. "The fire's ready. Come eat." Byakuya and Shimal hurried up the slope, their feet sinking into the heavy sand. Their clothes were tattered from years of wear. Byakuya had even replaced his old polo shirt with a rough leather tunic he'd tanned himself. They gathered around the fire with Darya, Yakov, and Connie, each holding a plate made from wilted banana leaves. Dinner that night was grilled shellfish drizzled with wild lime juice, a few slices of energy-packed root vegetable that once poisonous but detoxified in hot ash over the course of a year, and wild mushrooms sautéed in coconut oil on a giant seashell. "Wow, this smells amazing," Shamil said appreciatively. "Ever since we became castaways living like this," Byakuya replied with a small grin, "it feels like everything tastes good. Ugh." Something bitter prickled the back of his tongue. He spat a little, startled by the unpleasant taste. "What's wrong?" Lillian asked, concerned. Nothing," Byakuya replied, finding nothing unusual in his food. "Hey, don't waste it," Connie chided. "We went through a whole season of famine last year, remember?" Her remark drew a round of easy laughter, and Byakuya just swallowed the rest. Maybe Byakuya really had swallowed something strange. The world seemed to spin as he tried to stand. Lillian rushed to steady him. "Byakuya, are you okay?" He shook his head weakly. "My head, it hurts." "Come on, let's get you to the hut," Lillian said, slipping an arm under his. Byakuya's head felt impossibly heavy. The others panicked and hurried off to look for medicine, leaving him to rest alone inside the round-doored hut. It was the first time he'd fallen ill since they'd begun their new life here. His head throbbed, sweat drenched his skin, and his mouth was painfully dry. He was sure he'd eaten something bad. Something poisonous, maybe. The shellfish? The mushrooms? The root? He didn't know. All he knew was that he was the only one who'd gotten sick after the meal. The man gasped, his breath uneven, as his vision blurred violently with pain. Then he heard a voice. A man's voice. Deep, steady, and somehow familiar. "This psilocybin mushroom won't kill you," the voice said softly. "It'll just make you dizzy for a while." A cup of water was pressed against his lips. Someone gently lifted his head and helped him drink. Cool water trickled down his throat, easing the fire of thirst. Byakuya's vision was too clouded to recognize the figure before him. He wanted to call out to say Connie's name, or Lillian's, or Shamal's, or Yakov's, but his lips refused to move. The person helping him was a man. His hands weren't large, but they were strong and sure, and his scent, It wasn't the familiar mix of sweat, smoke, and sun-baked leather that clung to everyone in their primitive life. It was the scent of chemicals, like acids and bases, like sodium hydroxide and the sharp tang of metal and burnt flux, iron, aluminum, copper. They were scents that didn't belong to this world anymore, scents from a civilization long dead, like a ghost rising from the ashes of science itself. Heh. He heard that voice again, faint and distant, from somewhere behind the heavy blur of his half-shut eyes. Through the haze, like a dream bleeding into reality, Byakuya saw a wild tuft of hair he'd only ever seen in dreams. Silver-green colored, unruly, and achingly familiar. "You'll be fine," the voice said softly. "But we can't risk breaking the timeline, so it's better if you don't see me directly." Darkness crept in at the edges of his sight, but the voice remained. Then, slowly, he felt himself being pulled into an embrace. A slim pair of arms drew him close, a hand pressed gently against his shoulder. Byakuya knew that body. He knew everything about the person holding him. The embrace lasted maybe 30 seconds, and yet, when it ended, some part of him wasn't ready to let go. Through the fog of his fading consciousness, he glimpsed the man sitting beside him. He wore a white coat and a red cape with strange markings, an equation, E equals mc squared. Then came a burst of static, fragmented, robotic, as if tearing through from a broken speaker. "They have returned." The man's voice wavered, strained. 5 more minutes. Another voice, distorted. "Sen-chan, hurry! The time machine." "My time's almost up," the man said, his tone cracking with quiet urgency. "Help me rebuild civilization, Byakuya. Carry the story of the modern world. Gather materials. Seal them inside the Soyuz capsule. You and I, we've worked together to bring humanity back." Byakuya forced his eyes open, desperate to see, but all that met him was a blur of light and motion. Only the shape of a face, and strands of hair that fell over it in a way he knew by heart. And with a trembling breath, he whispered, "Thank you, Father." Byakuya jolted awake as a splash of cold water hit his face. "What the—" "You were passed out all day," Connie said, her voice tight with worry. "I think I picked the wrong mushrooms. You must have eaten psilocybin. I'm so sorry, Byakuya." No, Yakov cut in. "There aren't any psilocybin mushrooms on this island. I surveyed it myself. It must have been the roots or the shellfish that poisoned him." "It's all right," Lillian said softly. "You started recovering after we gave you green coconut water." Byakuya rubbed his temples. The pounding in his head had faded a little. "So I was out for a whole day because of food poisoning?" He gave a weak laugh. "No wonder. I had the strangest hallucination." "Hallucinations are a known effect of psilocybin," Connie insisted. "I told you, there's no psilocybin here," Yakov shot back. "So where would he have gotten it from?" Byakuya didn't answer. He wasn't sure himself. Part of him wanted to believe it was just the mushrooms, but he knew there really weren't any psychedelic fungi on this island. Then, unbidden, that familiar image flickered back into his mind. The silver-green hair, the warmth of that embrace. His heart stuttered. Somehow, he imagined someone had slipped those mushrooms onto his plate on purpose. His plate had always looked a little different from the others. He always put chopsticks on it, a quiet trace of who he was, of where he came from. Japan. Whoever it was must have brought those mushrooms from somewhere else. Maybe another island? Or maybe from the future. As a scientist, Byakuya knew that time machines existed only in the realm of human imagination. There was no such thing as a time machine. But he also knew that petrification should have been impossible, and yet it had happened. Part of him wanted to believe that what he had experienced back then was nothing more than a hallucination. But another part, the one that wasn't scientific yet somehow felt truer, wanted to believe otherwise. Stories about the modern age? Byakuya murmured. Minerals? Then he picked up a small branch and began tracing lines in the sand. He wanted to start creating stories, like folk tales. He even began thinking of a system, a way for these stories to be passed down through time. He couldn't be sure whether his efforts would amount to anything. He didn't know, but there was one thing he believed in completely. His son, Senku, was alive. He had ridden a time machine, come here to this age to join him in rebuilding the world's civilization. That's so cute. Okay, this will just be comments. I love this. Oh, it's so sweet. I have not actually finished or caught up to like where the time machine arc is, but I know it happens because I did not stay away from spoilers willingly. Oh, it's cute. I love this concept. It's so fun. Okay, so I recorded this for Voice Team 2026, one of the challenges. Yeah, I'm gonna hope I can post it now. For the record, it's on my. I know I'm going to start posting podfics to AO3 because I figured out how to do that. Isn't that cool? Like, that was a process trying to figure that one out. But anyway, it's under the same name if anybody wants to check it out. But yeah, basically, from now on, I'll try and get them on both. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed. Tell me what you thought about this. It's just a one shot. Tell me what you'd like to see next, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.